G'day folks, it's Rob here, and in today's clip we're going to be looking at the 3 most popular configurations people like to use to set up their own backyard and in-home aquaponics system. Just before we hook into the clip, I thought I'd let you folks new to the channel know that we have a couple of playlists chock full of helpful aquaponic clips. If you wanted to suss them out, there will be links in the description down below and a link or two also at the end of the clip if you can wait around that long to suss them out. You can also hit that little subscribe button down there and check the bell icon once it appears, and that way YouTube will know to send you notifications whenever I upload future clips looking at aquaponics or maybe component builds and that sort of thing. Now, the 3 system designs I will be talking about today are by no means the only way you can hook up an aquaponics system. They're just the 3 most basic and easiest for people to wrap their heads around. So all these systems at a minimum do require some essential components, them being a fish tank to hold the fish, an air supply to deliver oxygen to the fish. We also need some form of solids removal system, biofiltration to process the fish waste, to grow bed to grow the plants. We're also going to need a water pump and also in some cases a sump tank as well. Now, I recently published a clip that looks at the basic components you will need for building a backyard aquaponics system. So I suggest that you suss that one out if you're not familiar with any of these components. There is a link down in the description and there'll also be one at the end of the clip. So the first little system we'll have a look at is known by most as the basic aquaponics system. It consists of a fish tank, water pump to move the water around the system, some sort of solids capturing device, and then a biological filter, which in this case is also our grow bed. Now, the way the water moves around these systems is pretty basic. It is picked up by the pump in the fish tank along with any solids created by the fish and is delivered into some sort of a filtration device. I like the little canister filters because they're very efficient at collecting the fine solids created by the pumps as they smash up all the solids fish waste. From the little canister filter, you get very clean water discharging into the grow beds. Now, in this little system here, I've included a bell siphon. What happens is the water level will rise until it initiates the siphon. Then all that water in the grow bed will then be dumped back down into the fish tank, allowing oxygen to get down into the bacteria that process the fish waste and also the roots of the plants. Just quickly, there are other methods to regulate the water height or cycle through your grow beds, but I'll be covering them in another clip down the line. Now, there's a couple of basic rules of thumb when it comes to aquaponics. One that is, applies across the board, no matter what the design is you need to have enough biofiltration in the system, basically enough media somewhere to process the waste from the fish that you will be holding in the fish tank, and you can check out that little clip up there if you want to learn more about that. One that pertains in particular to these little small basic aquaponic systems is the sizing of the tank versus grow bed. Good rule of thumb to follow is the fish tank should be twice the size or twice the volume of the media bed that it will be servicing. So when the water exits the fish tank, fills up the grow bed, there will be enough water left in the fish tank to not only cover the pump, but not to stress out the fish. Now, these little basic systems can be made out of all manner of bits and pieces. Fish tanks with little flower pots on top. I've made a small one for some friends of ours out of some small storage totes. The first little system that we built here was made out of the 50-gallon or 200-litre drums. The fish tank was a drum laying on its side, and the 2 grow beds were made out of 2 half barrels with bell siphons inside them. The water was pumped up the back of the grow beds, emptied into them, and then was discharged via bell siphons down into the fish tank below. Now, this system didn't have a solids filter. It was back when I was quite prepared to muck all the solids out of the grow beds as they filled up slowly, but I would definitely recommend that you include a solids filtration onto anything that you build. Now, another popular version of these little basic aquaponic system is called the chop and flip. That's where you take a watertight container, chop off the top section, flip it over to create a grow bed, and the remainder is the fish tank down below. If you are interested in building your own little chop and flip IBC aquaponic system, I have a complete walkthrough clip that goes through the building of one of these systems in the playlist listed in the description down below. And I would also suggest that you pair it with something like the canister filter, which I also have a DIY build clip of in the same playlist, so check them out if you're interested. Now, one of the reasons I really like these IBC chop and flip systems is that they can form the backbone of the next two systems we're going to have a chat about now. Now, this next system is known by a couple of different acronyms. There's Chift Pist, which is constant height in fish tank, pump in sump tank. I think I've got that right. And also Chop, which is constant height, one pump. I prefer to call it a single loop aquaponic system because that pretty much all describes what the water is doing, flowing in a single loop. As I said, the chop and flip can also be upgraded into one of these styles of systems. So basically the fish tank becomes the sump tank and the grow bed on top just stays as a grow bed. So to follow the water flow in one of these systems, we'll start off in the sump tank. The pump picks up the water and delivers it to the fish tank, where obviously we have fish and some air stones to provide the fish with some dissolved oxygen. So the water entering the fish tank displaces some of the water and the fish waste from the bottom of the tank into a pipe arrangement called a solids lifting outlet, or SLO for short. The end of the pipe arrangement sits just above the base of the tank, creating a small gap which water and solids can exit the fish tank but prevents fish from escaping through to different parts of the system. At the top of the pipe you have a sideways sitting T-fitting that is connected to a pipe that runs out through the tank wall. Now, the reason we have this T-fitting at the top of the pipework is to prevent a siphon from occurring and draining all the water from the fish tank. This can come in handy, particularly if you have a bit of a failure in the system, a blackout or a pipe leak somewhere else. It may pump the sump tank dry, but you will always have a constant level of water in the fish tank, which I can guarantee you they will very much appreciate. So the water that exits the fish tank then runs into some sort of solids capture device like this radial flow settler. As the water velocity slows in the settler, bits of solid fish poop and what other waste drops slowly out of the water column and collects on the base of the filter. The clean water that exits the radial flow filter by gravity then flows out to the grow bed side of the system. This is where, again, you basically have a biofilter situation in the grow beds themselves. The bacteria will be oxidizing the ammonia produced by the fish, turning it into plant available nitrates, and the water cycles through the grow bed back down into the sump tank, where it is picked up by the pump, flows back through to the fish tank, creating a single loop. One of the biggest benefits of having the system set up in this configuration is that you need a relatively small size pump because basically all it's doing is picking up water from the sump tank, running it up into the fish tank, and then gravity is doing the rest of the work for you to bring the water back around again into the sump tank. A design like this would definitely be something to look into if you were looking at going off grid, because there's some very efficient little 24-volt pumps out there that would easily, work well on a solar and battery style system. Now onto the next system, which was originally called the Chop 2. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't give you a very good description on how the water moves through the system. For that reason, I like the names either split flow or dual loop, mainly because they give you some indication of what's going on with the water in the system. Now, this split flow or dual loop system does share the same component layout as the single loop, but where it differs is how the pump moves the water through the system. So we'll start off in the sump tank. To begin with, the line coming off the pump is fitted with either a T or a Y fitting, splitting the flow into two different loops, one for the fish or aquaculture side and the other for the grow bed or hydroponic side. Now, in the original Chop 2 configuration, the water was pumped to the fish tank, exited out through the solids lifting overflow, and then back down into the sump. Now, many folks aren't too happy with running their system like this, because what it means is a lot of those solids and unprocessed ammonia will travel back into the sump tank, where they can be picked up again and then delivered back into the fish tank. So myself and a lot of other people have decided to add in the solids filter, just like in the single loop system, and also a biofiltration component before the water gets back to the sump tank. Just quickly, a biofilter does not need to be a complicated piece of equipment. What we're looking to do is create enough surface area for the bacteria to colonize so they can process the fish waste into plant available nitrates. It can be as easy as having a basket packed full of shade cloth or other suitable material under the inflow from the solid settler in the sump tank. Just make sure that it's easy enough to access so it can be removed and cleaned a couple of times a year. You can also install a standalone biofilter like the moving bed bioreactor we've included in our builds here. And once the water exits the biofilter, it's back in the sump to be pumped around the system again. Now, the second loop of water in the split flow aquaponic system runs out to the hydroponic or the plant growing side of the system. There at the grow bed, it is regulated by valves, which allows you to control the flow rate into each individual bed. This not only helps you regulate the flow if you're using some sort of a siphon device, but also if you're using other grow methods like a deep water culture or a nutrient film technique where you want the flow rate to be a lot slower. Now in this bed here, we've got our bell siphon, so once the bed fills up, it triggers the siphon event, the water flows down into the sump tank where it's free to mingle with the other water and then be delivered to either loop of the system once more. Now of these three designs, I prefer the split flow system the best. The reason being is I have greater control of how the water moves through the system as a whole. I can restrict flow into a grow bed if I want to swap it out from a media bed into a raft bed, as I mentioned before, as generally you want a much slower flow rate into that style of bed. It also means I can isolate beds to treat pests if I'm using something that I have some concerns may affect either fish or crustaceans if I'm using them in the system. So I just think it is a lot more adaptable system and a lot more resilient if anything ever goes wrong. Now please keep in mind that there are other tweaks you can do to these systems, but I've tried to keep this clip as basic as possible just to help you newcomers get your head around the concept and the layout of a basic aquaponics system. Now there will be other clips coming to the channel, things like the dual drain outlet for your fish tank and also the mineralization tanks. So yeah, keep an eye out for them if they're something you're interested to adding to your system. And if you want to be notified, as I mentioned before, all you need to do is subscribe and tick the bell icon when it appears, and hopefully YouTube will send you notifications when those clips arrive on the channel. And also too, a quick reminder, there is a playlist coming up at the end of the clip and linked in the description down below that covers a lot of other information, including the essential component clip, the canister build clip, bell siphons and chop and flip builds. So check that out if you're interested in some more information. Lastly, I would like to thank all you folks for coming along, commenting, thumbing them up and sharing the clips to folks that you think may get a few tips or pointers out of them. I'd also like to thank those marvelous folks who are supporting us on various different platforms around the interwebs. We really do appreciate the contributions, and if you are interested in seeing how you can contribute to the channel, it doesn't have to be monetary. There will be a little link pop up down here at the end of the clip that you can click on, and yeah, you can find out more information how you can help the channel out. But I will pretty much leave it there, and I do hope that this clip has helped you out with a couple of pointers and ideas, and I will catch you all next time. Cheers folks, have a top one.